started using a screener called Amplify, which uses the DIBELS, which is the Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Learning Skills, or Early Literacy Skills. That's what DIBELS stands for, if anyone ever asks you. And so we're doing that this year. So we had training as part of our in-service at the elementary school. And then during the implementation, we actually had, because we weren't sure whether we were going to have the internet working or not. This is internet based, but it can also be done in paper pencil. And we had a couple folks from the Department of Education actually flew out here and were helping us do all of this implementation and help our teachers kind of learn how to do it. We've done doubles in the past. There's been a kind of a long break in between it. It's now required as part of the Alaska Reads Act because this is the sanctioned screener from the state. It's kind of fun because former principal at Noam Belts and longtime teacher at elementary school, John Berkeley, is now working for the department. He came out and was one of the folks helping everybody, so it was nice to see him. So DIBELS is done 3 times a year, fall, winter, spring. And this is what we're using to indicate how the students are doing in their reading, as well as using math as well. So any of the students that fell into the far below grade level expectations, one of the new things because of the Alaska Reads Act is we have to inform parents of their child's score. And then we have to create what we call IRIPs, Individual Reading Intervention Plans. That's for every single student has to have an individual plan that talks about what are the interventions that are going to be used by the teacher for the student. So we're just plowing straight ahead, making progress on that. Next. But we're very happy. This year we actually have full complement of special ed teachers. Last year it was quite a challenge. The one thing that we are kind of missing is one of our international teachers is slated to go to the preschool, and she is still not here yet. But we do have all of our, and she'll be doing some support of special ed at the preschool and Head Start. Okay. And then next, one of our things that have been a problem in the past, and we seem to have kind of got it under control, is our food services staff. And they're doing very well. Complaints district-wide about food quality, etc., have diminished, and now we're getting some compliments. The students say they like the food, which is great for us. And we're also doing this year with a fresh fruits and vegetables program, which gives our kids more opportunity to get fresh produce in their diets, and also to try some things that they might not have done before. And some of this money also has to be spent with local Alaska grown produce. Okay, and then we also are doing, I think you might have heard this term flying around. You'll hear a lot of it this year. The implementation of a PBIS program, which stands for Positive Behavior Intervention and Support. We talked a lot about some of the behavioral challenges that seem to be some kind of a leftover from the COVID pandemic. And this is one way that we're really trying to reward positive behavior, set some very clear expectations in all areas of school, including classrooms, so that students really know what are the expectations for behavior. And then we can also identify students that are struggling. We have some computer programs that we're using that really tell us like where are our referrals happening, when are our referrals happening, and that really kind of lets us know, okay, do we need extra people on the playground? Do we need to reteach playground expectations? Is it happening in the cafeteria? Do we see certain teachers that are really struggling, and they're the ones that are referring kids quite a bit? So we can get a lot of data in there to really help make sure that we're supporting the kids when and where they actually need it. Okay, so the next slide is our challenges that we are experiencing at the elementary school this year. So staffing continues to be a challenge. The teacher pool is drying up. And so we basically we have 5 international teachers. We heard today that all of them have their visas cleared, but they have to go through interviews in their home country at the U.S. Embassy, and then they can make their travel. Once that's all done, then they can make their travel plans and come here. So we have 4 classroom teachers that should be here at the elementary school, and they're not. So in the meantime, we've had a combination, we have a long-term sub. The fourth grade is supposed to be 3 classes, it's 2, and we had to reassign another person in to cover a class. So it's kind of interesting but we're making it work. But it is challenging to not, and it's challenging for the kids too, because they're going to get new teachers. Hopefully, right after the winter break, we get new teachers all over again. Substitutes do continue to be in short supply. We're making do. We have a few more subs, and we got some folks that appear to be kind of settling in and willing to work long term. But it still can be a challenge sometimes trying to find enough substitutes. Okay, next, we have, during the pandemic, things like that, the number of referrals for special education dropped pretty low. We had a lot of kids that weren't going to preschool programs, etc., and so we weren't identifying them early. We've had a lot of conversations around working more collaboratively with the pediatric staff at the hospital to identify and refer children sooner. As a result, the past couple of years, our number of special education students has risen as we're kind of doing the catch up now with all of the referrals and getting kids the services that they need. However, this means additional support. We continue to struggle with finding paras, and this is also becoming a bit of a financial crunch as well, trying to find the funds available to provide services for these students, such as speech. A lot of our students, younger students, have speech as a requirement in their IEP. You need to work with a speech therapist. Most of the time, this is done by a teledoc type of method. A lot of them are seeing them once or twice a week for 30 minutes. And if you've got 70 kids that are all doing that, it gets fairly expensive very quickly.
Yes, sir. The additional funding that the schools get through the state formula for special education is not enough to cover reality or the actual.
Yeah, so we get funding for special education in 3 ways. One is part of the funding formula itself, but it is tied to enrollment overall, not number of special education students. And that also that money is not supposed to be just for special ed. It just goes into the formula. It's also part of CTE. There's a whole the list about 4 or 5 things that little multiplier is supposed to help with. We get funding for our intensive needs students, and that's like 13 times a regular student. And a lot of that is taken up by these students oftentimes they require a one-on-one or one-on-two aid. So there's a staff member that's hired. Sometimes with those students, they require a much more intensive amount of occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy. And so those costs are higher for those individual students. So that's one reason why that's a large amount. The last is a federal grant, and that's the IDEA funding. And we often hear is that the federal government has never funded IDEA. When they have a lot of cost analyses, and basically they're funding about 60 to 65% of the needs nationwide for IDEA. So all of those funds together, the only one that's specifically set aside and really only supposed to be for special ed is the federal funding. The rest all goes into the general funds, and then we do actually have special ed fund expenditures as a separate category. But we have to look at, staffing and where are those students and everything. So a lot of that pays for like the teachers, just because we don't get any money that says here is just for special ed teachers. We have to pay for those teachers out of something, and that's why all that goes into general funds, understanding that. We have a special ed director, we have a special ed administrative assistant, we have all the teachers, we have all the paras, and all of the supplies for special ed and everything like that.
And it sounds like that the special ed teachers pool is smaller. I'm assuming, is it because there's more extensive educational and training requirements? Is it?
Not really. It's just that it's like social work. It tends to burn people out, and a lot of it is the demands on them, not with working with the students. It's the paperwork. There's a significant amount of paperwork. They have to put puts IEPs together, and IEPs have to be reviewed at least once a year, and more often if something changes. There's often, monitoring and data gathering to determine if students are making progress on their IEPs. It's just a lot of paperwork involved.
So there's a lot more turnover within the special education.
Yes. On that particular endorsement area in general.
Does the, on the federal dollars, I mean, is there like, I guess I'm gonna call it regional differential? I mean, does Alaska, based on, or communities in general, based on costs and how they fall in the matrix? I mean, I don't know if we're number 20, for instance, or number 2, but is that worked into the formula too, or?
Yes.
Okay,
So there is a cost, a location
okay.
differential that's part of the formula when you go through, and as the base student allocation kind of works its way through the formula and all the different multipliers you go through. But that formula has not been updated in quite some time. I think it's close to a decade now. So there's a lot of conversations around, do we need to redo the location differential? And there's also some conversations at some point about looking at redoing the entire foundation formula as well. So we also have school size multipliers. If your school is smaller, they actually give you a little bit of a boost, understanding that things aren't necessarily always can't be done at scale, and so there's more costs sometimes to run smaller schools than a larger school. And then lastly, the requirements of the Alaska Reads Act, even though we know it's important, there's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of additional time away from instruction. It's a lot of additional work for the teachers to do. So our site administrators are trying to figure out how can they kind of take the burden off of some of their teachers. So it is a challenge right now. A lot of the teachers, because of our late start, we literally started kids and then started testing kids. And almost immediately it's like, welcome to school, I'm going to give you a test now. Those are the golden days, we call when you first have kids in your class, and that's a lot of time which is usually spent with routines, expectation, getting kind of kids back into, especially at the elementary level, back into kind of the mode of doing school, if you will. So some of that was lost in trying to get through all of the DIBELS implementation, because that is one-on-one out as a teacher with a student, and it's only a couple of, they're like 1 minute or 2 minute tests, but if you have to do 3 or 4 of them, and then you got to try to, and you're also scoring at the same time, and you have to do something so that the rest of the kids have to be doing something, and keeping them without, climbing the walls or whatever, while the teacher's trying to over here assess one student can be really challenging, especially for newer teachers or teachers that haven't done something like that before.
Mark, did you have any questions? Jamie's getting ready to move on to the next school. Did you have anything on the elementary school?
No, nothing on the elementary, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Sig and Cam?
Cam is out ill.
Okay.
Not heard. Sig, are you on the phone? We've not heard from Sig.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to no builds. So the first thing to do is talk about our successes. So last year, towards the end of the year, and he's back, we were able to hire an assistant principal finally. Remember, that was a big challenge from last year that we started the year. The assistant principal had been hired, told us he wasn't coming on a Friday, and he was supposed to show up on Monday. And then we went through some challenges. We tried out a dean of students. Unfortunately, that was not a good fit. But we were very lucky to find someone that was working down in Anchorage and at a district level position, and was able to get out of that and come up here back this year. And so he and Terrascovia Smith are working well together. It's Dr. Michael Hicks. So we're very happy to have him. That's a huge support, try to get some of the processes back in place for the high school. We are also doing the same implementation of PBIS. This is a district-wide initiative. We're using some of this, especially, again, one of our big concerns has been the the rate of exclusionary discipline, especially for our Alaska Native students that have IEPs or in special education. The state has actually dinged us for what they call a disproportionality in that. Alaska Native students that are special ed are about 4 or 5 times more likely to be receive exclusionary discipline, which is ISS or OSS, in school suspension or out of school suspension, as opposed to Alaska Native students that they're not in special education. So because of that, they're monitoring our numbers, which we report to the state at the end of the year, and we have to use some of our special education funding to work on the problem. And we have decided that we will use PBIS as an opportunity to try to reduce what we call exclusionary discipline for students in general. So we're making very good headway. We're very lucky that Dr. Akes, his wife, came up to join us this year. She has a counseling background, but she's teaching art. She's also teaching some college preparatory classes, but she is highly trained in PBIS, so she's taken the lead on this program for our district. So she's doing a really great job at helping everybody plan to do it so that it's sustainable, long-term, and everybody understands what it is. Okay, and as substitutes or of a particular challenge at Belts, we had more people who were willing to sub at the elementary school or a charter school. This year we hired a permanent substitute for no Belts. We've never had that position before. So this individual is happy to be up there, and he basically shows up every day because we almost have at least one teacher out every single day. And so we can put him in whatever classroom we need to first. And then, he basically spends any time in between, maybe out in the hallway or anything like that, and help with some additional support. So that's worked out very well this year. And lastly, we're starting to make some slow but steady work on our curriculum. It's been something that since I first came to the district as the Director of Federal Programs and Curriculum, started some of the work and then it kind of faded during the pandemic. And between Ms. Smith and our new Federal Programs and Curriculum Director, Karen Dixon, we're starting to again get some of that worked on so that we have some written permanent curriculum and trying to clean that up. It's just kind of sloppy. So we're trying to work on that. All right, so what are the challenges that we have at the school? Okay, well, we've all heard vaping has been a big issue. Continues to be both a health and a behavioral concern. I really appreciated the City Council being willing to engage with us and be part of a community effort to deal with the situation. We're in the process of kind of looking at some other models as far as how some other districts have handled it from a disciplinary perspective, trying to provide support, education, cessation programs, etc., kind of formalizing that. So our old method was basically, you've got a vape, you are out for a day, and that's not. It's not a deterrent and it's not modifying the behavior at all. So we're looking at what can we do instead. So that's one of the things that we are working on, and we hope to continue to partner with the city, the hospital, our tribal organizations to again try to work on all of us working towards trying to bring this very much under control for our kids. Again, as I mentioned, next issue is our exclusionary disciplinary rates are still too high. Again, that's when we suspend kids off campus. We haven't been doing a lot of ISS simply because we have not been able to find a behavior specialist. So that is a position that's been vacant for quite some time. And because of that, we have been doing some lunch detention and after school detention as a alternate to ISS. Still kind of challenging sometimes. Kids sometimes don't show up for after school detention, which usually means that you get a double type of thing. So kind of getting our kids and our staff used to trying to use lunch detention, after school detention.
That party that you mentioned, is that synonymous with the school psychologist that you used to have?
No, it's well, we have had folks in the behavior specialist position, we did have one gal that did have a psychology background. But Ardith Potter was our behavior specialist for a very long time. And so it's just basically somebody that oversees the ISS room. And they've also done after-school detention sometimes, or lunch detention. And then when Artie retired, we had Mr. Brown, and then he became a counselor. And after that, it's been really difficult to find somebody to stay for much longer than a couple of months in that particular position. So, which is too bad, because that position, long term, those people can develop positive relationships with students, the ones that are experiencing challenges.
Can whoever either joined let us know who you are, or maybe it was somebody that fell off. Someone joined the.
That's all I'll get back on, John.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Okay, again, substitutes are still in need, so we don't want to. Last year, we had too much time for our counselors covering classes as opposed to being available for our kids that need counseling services. And so it's better this year. We've also had a very large focus on attendance district-wide, which is also not just student attendance, but also staff attendance. So we've been monitoring and reporting those rates. And I think that helps for a certain extent for people to maybe think twice if they're just calling in for a mental health day as opposed to being ill.
You said you were having initial success with this full-time substitute
Yes.
position. Did you change the position, or was you just finally found somebody that was interested in doing that?
Yeah, I mean, we, part of it now is substitutes are temporary employees, so there's no benefits available to those individuals. A permanent floating sub is an actual full-time position, so there are benefits to that. However, we really kind of had to take a look at, what did our sub budget look like? How much we were paying for teachers going and covering other teachers on like their prep and all of it. And we kind of felt that we could kind of make that fit into the budget for the year.
Is there an opportunity to expand that program? It seems like it.
Yeah, well, we may take a look at that. But again, like I said, it's still a higher cost to the district, because not only do we pay that individual every single day, so they're basically put on, they get an hourly wage that's very similar to what they were earning. It's a little less though than what they were earning as a sub, because subs don't normally work every single day. We also have to offer that person the same benefits as any other full-time classified individual. So it's higher cost, but to a certain extent, there's a little trade-off there. And like I said, if we at least know we have one person every single day that can go cover a class, or in this case, something, cover a half a class. So that's been some of our challenges. If somebody needs to be out just for half a day, trying to find somebody on the sub list that's willing to come in for half a day or something might be challenging, because some people went either the full day or nothing. So we're still looking at kind of how that works, and there will be discussion whether we want to do that again, have additional, or just go back to the old model. And lastly, morale is still a bit of a challenge at the high school. Again, behavioral concerns, some concerns with safety issues. You remember we did have a pretty significant threat at the end of last year with a student. And with some of the challenges we have with our old buildings and trying to keep the doors locking as things kind of move and shift a little bit. You have a door that locks, and then somebody finds out that it doesn't latch all the way, and we've got to go out and try to adjust the doors. So we're hoping that our, at least the upgrades to the security entrance will be, to the front entrances of both schools will help alleviate that to some extent. Okay, any other questions you guys might have about things and how things are going out of Belts before I move on to the charter school?
Oh.
Well, you just missed the whole conversation about what's going on in Belts. That's okay.
steady, he'll get through
Everybody is
it.
have a chance to read. I have some comments at the end.
Hey, John, I had a couple of questions for Jamie, if we still have time.
Yes.
Okay, first of all, I may have missed it, but did you say how the enrollment was doing compared to what you were estimating for the year?
I will actually address that, after I go through the schools. I have a whole slide to talk about enrollment.
Okay, and the other thing that maybe it's in your further presentation is, if there are classes that students are taking in high school that they can get college credits, and also are there classes for vocational students or vocational classes inside school and outside of school that kids could get credit for as well? Those are my other two questions.
We always offer, usually, we try to offer at least 2 dual enrollment classes every semester, in conjunction with the Northwest Campus. And we kind of, which ones we do, sometimes who's available to teach them, or what is the need for the student. So for example, Writing 111 is a very popular dual enrollment course that we try to offer on a regular basis, which helps students kind of knock out that freshman level writing course. So that's one that we do fairly frequently. We don't have a whole lot of students that do like concurrent enrollment, which means that they're taking courses on their own outside of the school day. Although if there's a particular need or a student request, we can, if we can't do it, the UAF does have online coursework that we can assist the students with getting them enrolled, cover tuition. We do have a little bit of money in our budget to help cover those kinds of courses. And one thing that I happen to be involved on, and it's coming up slowly, is the state is trying to put a sustainable program in place. That's the what I call the forgotten part of the Alaska READS Act. It's called the Alaska Distance Learning Consortium, and that would allow districts to basically work together and do an agreement directly, so that students in one district could access online courses that are being offered by another district. So, because some of our districts have some of them have pretty robust online coursework that's being offered through a school or some sort of a district-wide program. And this would open up those opportunities to other districts that just don't have that. And that way they would have a teacher in the state of Alaska that would, that's there, rather than doing something online through like Florida Virtual Schools or something like that. And hopefully some of the courses have often been modified so that they're very much Alaska focused. So you could take an Alaska history course from a teacher in, say, Ketchikan, as opposed to trying to take a history course from somebody that doesn't even live here in Alaska. So you get a better quality experience that way. So those are some other things that we're constantly looking at ways to support our students that are interested in continuing to earn college credits at the same time they go through their high school. Some of our students can access that opportunity by being enrolled in a study hall period during the day, and that would give them the opportunity to do online coursework within the day, either with UAF, UAA, or another institute that's still in those college credits. That answer your question, Mark?
Yeah, that's about college. And how about, are there vote tech educational opportunities inside or outside of school that
Unfortunately,
kids can get credits for?
yeah, we have the opportunity, but nothing is like really formal. So we have always offered students the opportunity for what we call work study. And work study basically allows you to actually be employed, go with an employer, and you get credit for work that you're actually doing with an employer. And that's something that we have offered students. But we haven't kind of quite got to the point where we have a whole lot of formal agreements between us and some of the employers in town, specifically to try to place students. So we're not quite there yet.
And how about students getting education over at NACTech. Do we still have that available for out students?
Yeah, although NACTech is only at half staff this year. They had a real challenge. They're supposed to have about 13 staff members, they only have 6. And so then those individuals have to split themselves between us and all of the BSSD schools. So that's really been kind of tough, but they've continued to offer classes for our known students. I always do a discovery class for middle school students. So they have an opportunity to see the different kinds of courses and programs that are available through NACTech that they can elect to take when they're in high school. And when they do many of their classes, then our high school students have the opportunity to enroll and take those. So the NACTech partnership is still alive and well, but NACTech's just struggling. They're not able to offer as many of the classes as they would like to, simply because of their own staffing issues.
All right, thank you, Jamie. That was good synopsis.
Okay, so next is to look at our charter school. Our charter school always tends to have a fairly high student achievement. I don't know if you guys saw, there was a big article, I think, in the paper saying that Alaska as a whole had some of the highest performing charter schools in the nation. It's kind of probably, we're used to hearing about, Alaska kind of lagging at the bottom for different things. I really think one of the reasons they're so successful is our model here. So charter schools always work under a school district here. They're not independent. So they're supported, they're monitored, still held accountable, still provide student choice to families. But they do very well as a program. We have had some changes. We had some retirements last year, and we have some new staff over there. We have one full-time and one part-time teacher, and that's still going well. So sometimes it can be a challenge with such a tiny school. Just the change of one teacher can make a big change, but things appear to be going very well. So that's pleasing. Again, they have always had a good level of parent engagement. I think that's been a bit of a struggle during the pandemic, but they are starting to see that come back as well. So we're seeing that the parent engagement is coming up. So I think allaying some of Ms. Liebert's concerns about that. Okay, so what kind of challenges have this charter school been looking at this year? Again, some of the same kind of thing. The morale is good, I think, but a lot of teachers are still just, that pandemic exhaustion, sort of some disillusionment to a certain extent with being in the teaching profession, still remains. So that can kind of, make things feel a little bit challenging. Again, they're continuing to improve their parent engagement, volunteerism, and again, substitutes. Still an issue even at the charter school. And lastly, again, the concerns about the sustainability of the program. They do well, and there's been, I think, at some point in time, when we have things a little bit more stabilized at Belts, we want to have the conversation about, can we look at the model of what goes well at the charter school. They have a 4-year curriculum model. Every year it's thematic instruction. They have one theme, and all the teachers are working, and all of the instruction kind of focuses around the theme. So what you're learning about in science class, you see some of the same things in your reading class, and you see some of the same things talked about in your social studies class. So there's a lot of connections that are made for students as they go throughout their school year. And there's been a conversation about, can this model potentially be replicated at Belts? So, but it'll take some work to try to go in that direction. But we'd like to see it as possible. So if there's any issues about trying to keep the program going at some point in time, if the charter school ends up collapsing back into Belts for some reason in the future, if we can still keep alive those things which are the best parts of that charter school, they would like to try to at least make some plans ahead for that.
What are the concerns about the sustainability of it? It sounds like I'm assuming it's a lot of kids want to get in the program.
Well, I mean, no, I mean, they don't have any problem getting people to sign up for it.
For full enrollment?
But a lot of it is, to a certain extent, you have to have, because we're leadership, direct leadership, we're relying on a principal teacher. That's always a tough position. You try to teach classes and still be involved in the administration of the school. So, um, there's, even if you're small, even if there's only 60 kids there, there's still some of the same things that, somebody with have 300 kids has to deal with. Might be on a smaller scale, but the tasks are still there. So Todd Heineman, he was the principal teacher there for a long time, worked really hard, and then we've been very lucky that Ms. Leeper came in. Part of her, I think her thoughts for the sustainability is more kind of a conversation about succession planning. If she retires, would we be able to find another person that could take that role? Either trying to find somebody internally and groom them. Lisa's been teaching this is her 21st year. A lot of people that get to that point, they start thinking about the big R word. And so then the conversation for her to a certain extent is, does she have anybody in her staff that she thinks might want to be moving towards that at some point in time, that she can kind of help grow and develop a successor? Or if not, then we would have to find someone that still had the same kind of vision of the school, to come in and kind of pick the ball and run with it. So she does have some concerns about that.
What percentage of the Belts campus is the charter school?
If we look at our average cohort is always about 60. And so about 25% of kids grades 5 through 8 will leave the normal move from the elementary school to no belts and come to the charter school instead. So about 25% of each grade level, 5 through 8, is
Yeah. Can all of the families that want to participate in the charter school, are they able to do that? I remember hearing stories about lotteries and things like that. I don't
Yep.
think that's still.
Yep, they still do that. So they have some things built into their charter that there are some preferences before the true lottery kicks in. So founding members, there's a group of families who were originally involved in putting the charter school together. Their children get preference. Any children that are of the staff would get preference. They also have a sibling preference. So if there's an older sibling that's currently attending, then they get preference. And if after all that's filled, then they literally pull from the rest of the pool. So it's random, but not totally.
So there's a lot more applicants than there are positions.
I would say it's not huge. I would say their waiting list, it varies by grade level sometimes. But they always have a few families on the waiting list for almost every grade level, but not in every year. So some years, for example, if they have students that transfer out for some reason, some of them just decide to go to Belts, families move out. If they don't have any child on the waiting list at grade level, they might pull another child from another grade level. So typically they have 15, 15, 15, 15. But some years they'll have 15, 15, 16, 14.
So it's basically the amount of teachers that limit the
Yeah,
classroom.
to a certain extent, and also their space. If
Right.
you've never had a chance to come out and see their space, like I said, they're kind of in the middle of the district office building is DOT, district office, ACSA, and dorms, kind of in that level, working from south to north. So they don't have a lot of room to grow. We gave up one of our itinerant rooms, so they would have a special ed room. Because right now they don't have any place where a student could really leave the classroom and go receive support or anything from a special ed teacher that's private. They just have to go to a desk in the back of the room or something like that.
So is the 60 built in order, or can that?
No, the six is just kind of where they're working at. I think they're chartered for, I think it might be 80, might be the limit. Their charter actually does list a limit, so it's not like they just take whoever they want. And so that's just what that they've really, they said 15 is that's kind of what we would like to teach every year.
I would just say if Nome Public Schools is thinking about kind of expanding that model due to the successes of it, sort of relaxing some of those enrollment restrictions.
Well, what we would do is
Outside
if the
of-
charter school was still there, we would look to employ a lot of their curriculum structure, not lottery structure. So that way, basically, I mean, obviously, we're any student that moves within our boundaries, we take. So that means that students that were at the middle school over at Nome Bells, we would have kind of this very similar structure as far as they do their thematic instruction, how they kind of develop their classes. So they have grade levels, but a lot of times they'll take and they'll have like, you have a reading A, a reading B, and a reading C. So there's 3 reading levels, but 4 grades. So students in that case, you might be a 5th grader, but maybe you're reading well ahead of the curve. So maybe you're in the reading B. You know, the reading A is mostly 5th graders, maybe a couple of 6th graders that, you know, still are struggling a little bit, maybe even a 7th grader. So, you know, the students really are, there's a lot more fluidity about the group you're in isn't necessarily your age or your grade, it's more ability grouping. Okay, any other questions about the charter school? Okay, lastly and briefly, is Extensions, our homeschooling program. And our goal here and what we've been successful is to continuing to try to provide a school choice opportunity for our families so they have a local teacher here and keep them kind of within the district, as opposed to joining some of the other larger programs such as GILA program homeschooling, which other school districts. Ms. Ventris is our homeschooling teacher again, and she works really, really hard to really try to provide a more personalized opportunity and that she's physically able to make contact with parents and students. And she also organizes occasionally some kind of elective enrichment opportunities for the students to get together as a whole and sometimes with their families. So they kind of develop some of those contacts and support each other as a homeschooling community. So it's nice that we're able to offer that for our kids as opposed to sending them out to district literally, even though they may physically be here. And we even have a couple of families that have relocated to other places, and since now we're a statewide program, their kids still continue to be involved in our homeschooling program. So this has become really good for sometimes our families have to leave temporarily for medical reasons or other issues, things like that, but their kids can still really stay connected with the district and get support, and if they come back, they can just kind of move seamlessly back into one of the other brick and mortar schools if they choose as well. So our challenges for that, the enrollment has decreased slightly. Our big high, as you'll see shortly, was 61 kids, I think, but that was during the early days of the pandemic. So we used to be lower. We used to be around 15 and was pushing it if we got closer to 20. Now we kind of fluctuate between 25 and 30. But that's still a growth overall with the program as opposed to 5 or 6 years ago. And what we do see, unfortunately, is that homeschooling really does require parent engagement. You know, the parents have to be involved. The parents are the teachers. And we have some students that try this. They'll leave belts. They'll go to extensions. For whatever reason, they don't think they're doing very well. And they struggle with either attendance. They're struggling with achievement. So they'll try to go to this, and then they just kind of stop communicating with Ms. Ventris, our head teacher. And she requires regular communication, and they have to submit samples of the students' work, everything like that, to show the students are making progress in the plan. So for some of our kids, they tried it, but the home support is more important than I think some of the families anticipate. And some of our students do end up as dropouts. They don't come back to the brick and mortar sometimes. They just disappear. They do not re-enroll. Okay, so the last thing before we move on to extensions is looking at things that we've done well as a district. These are looking at districting as a whole. So we went through negotiations last year, and our teachers had the highest rate that I can find anywhere in the state, which is 5%. They don't think that that's high. But I surveyed all of my other fellow colleagues around the state, just out of curiosity, how much grades did you guys give your teachers last year? The one that came the closest to it, I think, was Kenai at 4%. So, so we really do, we appreciate our teachers. We try to do our best to pay them as well as we can. The challenge is that this is a 1-year contract because at that time when we have to go through negotiations, the timing isn't great because we haven't decided, the legislature hasn't made any decisions on the budget by then. So they haven't made any decisions on any changes to the BSA. I don't like to budget on maybes because as you saw there, they came through, they declined last year to actually increase the BSA. They said, we're going to give you this big one-time funding. It's the largest one-time funding they've ever given in the history, and then the governor cut it in half. So any superintendents who were planning next year that they were going to get this big one-time funding, then had half as much as they thought they were going to have. So we build our budgets assuming that there will be nothing, and then we just go from there. Okay, so again, getting the security upgrades done. We're almost ready to get the RFPs out. It should be going out into the last few tiny little things. So that will be huge, and again, that's largely due to the generosity of the city to provide the funding for this. That will be, I think, a good step forward. We're continuing to do a lot of work for safety and security this year, both physical, emotional. We're doing a lot of cybersecurity work this year. That's becoming a big thing in education nationwide, ensuring that all of our electronic devices and everything are protected, our network is protected, our student information is all protected as well. So lots of work on safety and security this year. We have phase 1 of the DVC control system is finally complete. So we're very excited, and we're still doing some training with some of our staff, so that some cross training, so that they can learn how to, read the control system and see problems and go take care of them, so that they're not deluged with a whole bunch of work orders. So there is still work to be done. There's still work to be done at the elementary school. There's a little bit of work to be done at the high school and also at the district office building. So that's our phase 2. And that is, we are working slowly on putting that together as a package for submittal to the state for funding, but we're waiting to try to get some funding for some of our other projects first. So, but hopefully we'll start to see some energy savings as a result of this first phase 1, which is a whole bunch of the high school, probably about three quarters to 80% of the high school online. The elementary school, now we can monitor. We have and do some controls, although there's some issues with the computer system there. There are 2 different models. So Siemens is what we went with, and they have Honeywell. There's a lot of work to complete. Okay, and then we have some new staff at the district office doing well. So when our longtime HR clerk left us, with the permission and conversation from the board, I hired an individual to work in as an assistant superintendent. I have to travel occasionally, and it's nice to have basically a backup for myself to pick up responsibilities. He was also a huge help when I had my health crisis earlier this year, so he was able to kind of pick up and keep things going when I was out of order. And we have a new federal programs director. We're super excited. She's very experienced. She is American, a lot of work in New Mexico, working with a lot of tribal organizations and everything. So we think that she'll be an excellent addition to our organization. She's done a lot of work with parent engagement, things like that. So she's kind of getting things up to speed, and she'll be really good helping us improve a lot of how we're using a lot of our federal.
On this page, Jamie, I guess just as far as, we had an individual come to the meeting here a while back, concerned about the fact that maybe this isn't something that you want published, but are the majority of the doors to the school locked during the day?
So most of them do. We had some where, if, for example, somebody just lets them close, the latch doesn't fully engage, or you have to pull it. Or you go out there and if you shake and jiggle it enough, you can pop the door open. So those are the kinds of things that unfortunately, and that's a lot, some of these are probably the original doors. I don't know, but they're pretty old. But our maintenance staff is trying to work as fast as they can to see if there's a lock issue, if it's door hardware issue, if it's frame issue. We had one doors that weren't working very well at the district office because they'd been hit by a loader trying to clear ice away. So the frames were out of true, and they had to kind of fix that a little bit. So those kind of things that we're challenged with. The high school, one of the biggest challenges there, if you've been there, is just the number of doors that lead to the outside. Because it was not built back when people were really concerned about school security and safety. And so we have any number of doors that we don't use. But there's also and some of them are hard to kind of monitor just because of where they are. But we can't just block them off. Because of, the fire marshal would probably come in and, be a little bit upset. If there was an emergency, we would need to have, plenty of, the evacuation routes or whatever. But that does mean, there's a lot of challenges in making sure are all of those doors actually closed? Are they locked? Are they secure? So there's just some ongoing challenges.
But it would be a correct statement that if everything works, that outside traffic is channeled. They just can't go to any single door and get in.
No, I think that would be a little bit of an exaggeration to say anybody could just walk in and get in a door. Elementary school, for the most part, most of them are locked, but every once in a while we do find one. Like I said, it's not latching well. And with the entrance projects, we're going to completely replace the doors entirely, door frame, everything. So I have a brand new frame, brand new doors, new hardware and everything like that. So at least at the entrances to the high school, which includes the bus entrance and the entrance to the elementary school, those doors will be completely replaced and updated.
Martha, do you have anything here on district-wide or to add here?
No, I didn't have anything further right now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody, Maggie?
How large is is it just the doors that are being replaced? Or I'm kind of curious about the actual renovations happening to the entrances.
So the projects basically, we're going to replace the exterior doors. And then we're also going to, at the elementary school and the high school, if you walk into the high school, remember you just had the glass storefront and there's no doors, right? So you walk into the front, there's a little vestibule right there. And then there's the glass, you've got the side lights and the transom lights, but there's no doors. So that would be replaced and there would actually be a wall, but there would be doors now. And those doors will be controlled with there'll be in that vestibule, there'll be camera and a little thing that you can buzz. Very similar to if you ever gone to the youth facility, press the door, hello, they can see you, and then they can just press a buzzer and the door's open and you can walk in. So, because right now, when you walk into the high school, people can walk in, take a right turn and be in the RC and nobody has any clue they're in the building. Just because there's no line of sight really, unless you have somebody in the front office. So that would allow, and so those would automatically lock like when school started, those interior doors would lock down. So anybody coming in after that has to buzz in. So we do the same thing at the elementary school as well. So they do have that second set of doors, but that's all glass. So they would replace that with new wall and new doors. So basically it just provides that, anybody coming in after, in the morning, as people are coming in, there's a whole bunch of staff standing out there that could keep an eye on things. But after that, That's when the problem comes in. Is after school's out, everyone kind of goes away to their classrooms, and neither one of those front offices were really built with the design of keeping an eye on who's coming into the building.
So is this just for prevention matters that this is?
Basically, yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So anybody coming in like after 8:30, if you're a late student, your parent coming to pick up your kids, whatever, you still have to go. You'll be able to get into the front through the front, so you can get in. You don't have to stand out there in the cold and wind, waiting for someone to buzz you in. You can walk into the vestibule, and there you'll press the little buzzer and say, you know, I'm Mrs. Jones to pick up my son Bobby for a dental appointment. They'll be able to see you on a camera, and then they can just buzz you in, and then you can come to the front office.
So what if there's nobody in the front office?
They'll have they'll have a secondary buzzer. So at the high school, it will be in the assistant principal's office, which is actually in the RC, but they'll still be able to look on the camera and they can buzz someone in. And at the elementary school, they'll have one in the front office, and then they'll have another one either in the principal's office or the assistant principal's office. So it'll be a backup, but yeah, if they go to the high school and there's nobody in the front office, hopefully there should be someone in the secondary office, so.
Mr. Mayor.
But again, they're not just coming in and wandering around the school.
Also, Jamie, some of this is also ADA compliance issues. I
Yeah,
think that
the operators in many cases are not functional. We're also redoing at the bus, you know, they're repouring a lot of the concrete, because you know, the concrete coming up the entrance of the high school is kind of broken and damaged. And the concrete over by the bus doors was so damaged, they ended up taking it out, and now there's just gravel. If you have a student on a wheelchair going across gravel is not fun, so they're going to be pouring new concrete at both of those areas and making sure that the ADA operators are also functional at all three of those.
Lynn's reminding me of the clock.
Well, I actually had a question, but
I
That was
thought
my
you were reminding me
question.
of the clock, but
I'm almost done.
yeah, no. I guess we certainly want to hear from you, but I will shut up. I've
Right.
got some time.
Well, the next slide that you were asking about, Mark was asking about enrollment. This is our enrollment. So you can kind of see historically, this is actually 7 years worth of enrollment from FY18 to the current year. As you can see, the charter school is pretty flat because they usually always have 60 students. This is during our count period, which is in October of every year. So you can see the homeschooling programs on the bottom. You can see the number's been pretty small. Then there's the big then there's the big jump during the pandemic, the year following the start of the pandemic, and then it's come back down, but it never went quite down as low as it was before. So you can see also the change in the elementary school and the high school. We did see a drop, a pretty good drop in enrollment from the elementary school during that first full pandemic year. You had a lot of parents that just elected to take their kids elsewhere or just not keep their kids in school. But then the enrollment has rebounded, but never quite as high as it used to be. You can see back in FY18, we had almost 400 kids. We never quite got that high again. Also, the other thing is that in here, and I think it was FY20, that was actually the year that we moved sixth grade from the elementary school to the high school. So that's primarily responsible for the growth in the high school. We added about another 45 kids from the elementary school to the high school level to go from a middle school, a junior high model to a middle school model. So the balance has grown over time, while the elementary school is lower, but you can see they're not terribly different. There's about a difference of about 40 kids between the two of them, which is just about, again, that one grade level. So, good news is our enrollment isn't, many of the districts across the state are really struggling. They're seeing a lot of declining enrollment. Ours did decline a little more than we projected, but it's still fairly stable. So what are our challenges that we're looking at this year? Again, recruitment and retention remain remains a very large issue. So again, like I said, we're filling some positions with international teachers, and we may need to go that route again this year. One thing that we learned is that we can't wait till the last minute to hire international teachers. The process just takes way too long. I'd say this month, at this point, we're at 5 months since we first started the process with 5 teachers that we're working at. So this is an H-1B visa process opposed to what's called a J-1 visa. They are different. The J-1 visa is much easier to get. It's called a cultural exchange visa. They're for 3 years. They can be renewed for an additional 2. And at the end of that, the teacher must return to their home country for a minimum of 1 year. So that will get you a teacher for 5 years if they're really good and everything continues and we continue offering them and they decide to stay. And then they're gone for at least a year. We elected to go with what's called the H-1B, which is the highly qualified professional visa. These are a little bit more challenging to get. That's why it's taking so long, because they are 3-year, renewable for another 3 year, and at towards the end of that, the individual can apply for a green card and become a permanent resident in the U.S. So it takes longer because this is a path to residency in the United States. And so if they bring their families with them and everything, their families can also apply and stay here in the workforce and everything like that. So we've been trying to learn from other districts around the state that have hired international teachers. Majority of them do come from the Philippines, but we do have a small Philippine community here that we're hoping will kind of help support these teachers as they get through their culture shock period and help them feel accepted and part of our community. One of our teachers is actually coming from Canada, all over the world.
So these international teachers, are they like fresh graduates from the education program, or are
Many
they?
of them are very experienced. Several of the teachers we're bringing up are like 10 or 15 years in the classroom. And that's actually what we see. We don't see a whole lot of fresh, brand new, never done anything. A lot of the teachers that we see are teachers with a lot of experience, a lot of education in the Philippine system as well. For a lot of them, they have families, and some of them are leaving their families at least temporarily while they come over here and kind of get themselves settled. And partly because I did a little bit of number crunching, and I think the average salary for a Philippine teacher in U.S. dollars is somewhere in the vicinity of about $15,000 a year. So you can see why coming to the U.S. is very attractive to these people.
Are the educational requirements in the Philippines similar to the United States? Is that why?
Right, yeah, so part of the process they have to go through is what they call a transcript review. So there are organizations that basically, they take all the education that they received in the Philippines, and that's compared course by course and everything to like an average U.S. bachelor's degree in whatever, in education or something. And they give you an equivalency. They say this individual holds the equivalent of a bachelor's degree in elementary education in the U.S. Or they say this person may hold the equivalent of a master's degree in special education. So that's something they have to go through as both part of the application process for us, and it's also mandatory to get their visas as well. So we kind of have, so you say, okay, they have basically the same. Our biggest challenge is that special education in other countries may not look much like special education here. I mean, teaching children to read, still teaching children to read, reading in a different language. But in the Philippines especially, being able to speak, read, and write English is considered very valuable. So a lot of their coursework is learning English. A lot of them, that's something, and part of our screening process when we're looking to hire these teachers is, how do they write? As in, when they write, their cover letters and everything, emails with us, what are their writing skills in English? When we do their interviews, what's their verbal skills? Because we need to make sure, if they're going to be teaching our children, are they intelligible? Is it easy to understand them so that, because they're going to be teaching our children possibly in English to read as well. So that's part of our screening process to make sure that they are good speakers of English as well. of our hurdles, of course, is housing. And this is a problem across the state. It's not just Nome. I hear from other superintendents constantly talking about their challenges with trying to figure out where to put their teachers. Big or little. Even places like Anchorage are complaining about there's not enough housing for teachers. So, our budget this year is going to be really, really challenging. So, last year, of course, they did not increase the BSA. So, if they decide to flat fund us for 8th year in a row, that's going to provide a pretty massive problems for all districts across the state. So, this year, the School Boards Association has resolved to ask, last year they asked for, I think, $860. This year they're asking for $1,655 increase to the BSA. What they did was they kind of went back and looked at, how was inflation since the last year that they stopped putting any increase. And that's what they say they would need.
Double or nothing.
But, so we, again, because last year we signed a 1-year agreement, we're gonna go through negotiations again with certified staff, which could provide challenging. They were not easy last year at all. It was a tough negotiations year. I anticipate another challenging one. The one-time distribution that they did give us, of course, for next year, it's not coming. That's the whole point of the one-time. We have it for this year, and the conversation we constantly try to have with our legislators is that a one-time increase is a bonus. It's not a salary increase. Your boss increases your salary by a certain percentage. You expect that the following year your salary should also be at that increase and maybe a little bit more of a living increase. A bonus is a bonus. You get it, and next year you might not. And so that's our challenge. We cannot build our staffing on one-time bonuses. Because our staffing agreements typically are 3 years. This is the first time in the history of Nome, I think, we've ever done a 1-year negotiated agreement with teachers.
You're not alone. I think your city utility is in the same boat.
So it's really tough. So as we kind of, we're moving into budget, we're in the process of getting our first budget revision for FY24 ready to submit to the school board. We're also starting to build the first budget for FY25. So we'll be looking at things like, what do the student-teacher ratios look like in classes at the schools? Will we have to look at some potential cuts, which might potentially mean layoffs? Doing a reduction in force is not fun. We would like to avoid that if at all possible. Sometimes attrition takes care of the problem for us, but there's no guarantees. One of the things we are doing and that we're encouraging is, we know a lot of people are going to be gone, but December 19th, still working, even though the school is out, we are going to be having a budget work session, and it's going to be focusing, it's not just for the board, we're inviting staff, we're inviting community members, and you, of course, are also invited, where we're going to have a conversation about how do school districts do it. We talk in detail about the funding formula, how that actually works, and then what are all the other considerations that we have to take in place when we start talking about the expenditures, once we kind of have a rough idea what our revenues are going to look like. So, to try to kind of help a lot of people understand, because, you guys probably understand in the city, because also there's complex funding when you talk about governments. We have to talk about the idea of fund accounting, where certain funds can only be used for certain things, even if something else is running short. We can't take out of this bucket, put it in the other bucket. So, and that's hard for people to understand. We'll talk about our different funds that we keep, which is, our apartment fund, transportation fund, food services fund, general fund balances, all those type of things. So people can try to understand why we have money in some places and not so much in others, and why we can't spend that money on other things.
You said, sorry, you said you guys can't do bonuses for staffing. You guys do retention?
I'm sorry?
You guys do retention bonuses for teachers?
We have done some of that. It really depends, like I said, on what actual funds we have available.
We don't do that within the union
We've done
agreements.
some of that in the past. Last year, we also did an early response bonus. So when we issued contracts for teachers, they always have 30 days by law to either sign it and return it or resign. But last year we said if you give us an earlier heads up, we'll give you, whether you're going to resign or come back, we'll give you a little bit of extra money if you let us know earlier. And then if they just change their mind, whatever, at the end of the year, then we'd have to take that out of the last paycheck. That was something. We have done retention bonuses in the past, but a lot of that's come out of our COVID funding. And unfortunately, this is the last year of COVID funding. So this year, COVID funding is going to pay for the last little bit of our HVAC system, our last final payments, and clean up a little bit. Our summer school program for adults is going to be COVID funded this year. And we have some other, we just have some other small things that we've been putting that money for, but it's gone after this year.
The reason I ask, it works pretty well in the private sector, so I just wondering what it would work.
Well, and typically when we do retention bonuses, we give them to people in the fall. So, like I said, we have done that before, but, with our budget being super tight, it's tough. It's tough to try to figure out where we can do that. If we can, we definitely will, but it is challenging. Okay, and the last here is that the state underfunds transportation, so the cost of our transportation here is never covered by the amount of money that the state gives us for transportation. So we always have to take money out of general funds, put it into transportation. And at the federal level, this is a federal issue, the amount of money that we receive. So we are what we call a CEP district, a community eligibility provision district, which states that the measures of poverty in our community are high enough to offer all students free breakfast and free lunch, which is great for our families, but it means that we do not have any free or reduced or full price people to basically to recoup any money from. And the amount of money that we are reimbursed by the federal government for our meals is significantly lower than the amount that we are charged, or the amount that it costs us to provide a breakfast and a lunch to every student. So we are subsidizing it. This year, we're subsidizing it to almost $200,000. That's a concern. It's part of our conversations with our federal delegation. And it's just the same, we get the same amount, almost the same, we get the same amount no matter where you are in Alaska for the most part. I think they might have an Alaska rural and Alaska city. But a lot of other districts have the same problem, where they have to use some of their general fund money to help pay for the food services for students. So that is a challenge for us. That's money we could spend elsewhere, give raises to teachers, but we're feeding kids.
But if kids
It's a
aren't
tough-
eating,
That's a tough choice.
if kids aren't eating, their brains aren't working and they're not learning. I mean, I think that's a well-known fact. But what about the, how much is having to go into pupil transportation?
About 40,000 a year,
Okay.
not quite as much.
Does that include student transportation, like sports?
Well, that's just student transportation. So the student transportation, basically the contract we have with Morgan Enterprises. So that's our regular bus runs. Our activity bus runs this year are actually being covered out of our County 1C migrant education funds, because we do migrant tutoring twice a week. And so we're able to justify paying for those bus runs out of the migrant money. But field trips, any activity, when, if we decide to actually ask Morgan to, run people back and forth for basketball games or anything like that, all of those come out of our transportation fund. Okay.
I don't know how close you have to be to, we're picking people up a block away from school and taking them, it seems like in some places.
Yeah, technically it's supposed to be a half a mile from school, but and it's from even for the littles. But for some of them, like I said, for some families, having their kid walking 4 or 5 blocks if they're 5 years old is not an attractive prospect if it's dark. So
Cold, windy.
Yep. So, but we also have families that are on the more, very much on the outskirts that ask us about transportation as well. And then, the conversation for some of our families that have asked us for certain places, and, we try to make things happen, but sometimes they have to bring their kids to the closest possible bus stop. Because some places that, if our transportation, people are not comfortable putting the buses on some of our roads are just not really great because you have to be able to turn around. Some of them, or they get where the roads are exposed, like heading up the Dexter bypass. They've, Mariah has had repeated requests for a bus stop up in that community as you're going between Anvil and Newton. And that road there, since it's not well maintained by the city only goes so the state only goes so far and then they stop. She said in many cases it's just almost impassable. She's not comfortable with sending her bus driver up there on a regular basis. So it's we don't have to provide any transportation at all, except for students. It says in their IEP we will provide transportation, but we know again, the community expects it, and we try to do our best to provide that. But there is an additional cost to us above and beyond what the state gives us to provide that service. All right, I have one last slide, and then I think I am done for the evening. And this is super quick. So, major maintenance. So, challenge this year, our projects did not score well on the state CIP list. Very frustrating. Last year, the supplemental funding for the Nome Belts roof was at number 9. And what I've learned working with this is that if you're not in the top 10, it's not happening. And last year, we had just enough funding to do the first 10 projects on the list, and the governor vetoed half of that funding. So they only do the first 5 projects on the list. So we were really excited. We thought we're going to get it. We're going to get the roof done. And now it's all the way down at 18. So it's not happening this year. The highest actually scoring one this year is replacing our old generator. So we're probably not going to get any projects funded. We're actually looking at a different person to help us write our application. It can help us score better. It's terrible because we're in competition with all of the other school districts around the state. And so we have some continued demands on our fund. We have a CIP fund. So we're continuing to do roof repairs, and we're developing a lot of issues at the elementary school. We have one classroom that's really not usable right now because we have so many problems with continued leaks, and they keep trying to fix it, patch it, but it's getting to the point where the elementary school is going to need to have a roof replacement as well. The hot water heaters up at the D building for the dorms are really starting to age, and I got a less than hot shower this morning myself because I live in that building. And the cost for hot water heaters is a joke, but it is. We need some additional storage at the Belts campus at this point. They've done a really good job at cleaning up Conex, but we struggle when the food deliveries come in, trying to figure out where to put them. So we may have to try to figure out maybe purchase some Conexes. So we need some additional storage, but we got what we got. And so again, to fund. The other thing that our CIP fund is, all of these projects that we submit to the state, our participating share is 30% of the total cost. So we have to have 30% of the total cost in that fund and ready to go if the state does decide to fund our project. So people look and you say, look at all that money you've got in a CIP fund. And I said, well, that's because we have a $5 million roof project that we will have to pay 30% if it gets funded. So that's half of what the money that's in there would have to go if our roof was funded. It would be gone. And all the other projects that we have, the generator, we're still applying for the Secure ADA as a reimbursement project eventually. What's the other one that we have? The elementary school fire alarm needs to be have some replacement work on it as well. We'd like to replace the entire system. We're really supposed to have money for all of those ready to go, even though we know it may be several years before the state might get around to funding. Plus, we have to pay for anything that's over $5,000 comes out of our CIP fund. And we have repairs, vehicle repairs, things that we don't plan for that happen anyway. All has to come out of that fund. So that is it's It's a slush fund, but it's a very, very important one, and really difficult to say, well, use it for something else. Because then we won't have it, it's a rainy day fund, it's been raining here for a long time. So that's the end of my presentation. Any questions that you might have on CIP or anything in general?
Talked a lot about state and federal funding. What about the funding that comes from the federal?
The state for what, I'm sorry?
We talked a lot about the state and federal funding, but is there any other like organizations that help fund the school to maybe have a conversation about budget cuts? Or is it just been like local participation?
Well, we do have, we get some other funding through grants. Some of those are what they call block grants, it's just a dollar amount, you don't have to apply for them, you just get them. But again, most of those are very specific how we have to use them. We've had conversations with some of our local, like tribal organizations about other things. We've gone through some competitive grants to try to get funding for either positions, or we did one big, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. We actually did one to try to fund the second part of the HVAC project, phase 2. Because they're very specific though, because we will only fund these types of projects. So we have to have a project that fits their criteria. So that's some of our challenges sometimes when we go out to fund. And some of them will only fund up to a certain amount. And a lot of our projects are way over that. So again, that's part of our challenge. We always keep our eyes open for any grant opportunities and we'll apply for them if we can. But sometimes the grant process is very complex and onerous. We sometimes outsource that as well to have somebody else write the grant for us. We don't have the time or the expertise to do a good job on them as well.
So what about like Cowaruck or Mountain Sound, like those local organizations?
Yeah, we've approached them for some of their projects, but again, talking to Sitnastock, talking to Cowaruck, talking to BSNC, a lot of them are more interested, most interested in funding projects that are cultural in nature. NSCDC, we haven't gone out to them for a large infrastructure grant yet. They do have those, but again, they do have a cap on that. There is an amount usually that we cap it off at. So some of our projects are above the cap, unfortunately. So we've tried with some of them, and some, so we've gotten small amounts. It's been a while since we've got a really big donation from anybody outside of the city. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate you guys letting me come and talk to you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Appreciate it and all the good work. I just had to comment on Mrs. Thomas being back in town. I was shocked to see her on the street. I don't know how you managed to pull Suzanne back, but.
She's our long-term sub.
Oh, okay.
Now at the elementary school, but she won't stay up past Christmas.
Right,
It's
well.
been nice to have her back, and I think she's enjoyed being back, but she's ready to go back.
Yeah. No, it was great to see her, and I think she has a great rapport with the students. So.
We've been blessed to have her back.
All right, great, thank you. All right, well, we're 5 minutes over the time of the meeting, and we still had to talk about capital priorities. Looking through the agenda here, I wouldn't see that this meeting would last a real long time, potentially. It could be as short as 15 minutes, no more than 30.
I was thinking an hour.
Well, no. Adam's here. We're not going to do an hour. So I guess we have two alternatives. We could postpone the start of the regular meeting just a little bit, or we could move on to the regular meeting and then pick up a little bit of time after the regular meeting for the to talk a little bit of priority. Unless you have a preference, otherwise I say stretch our legs and, back here at 7:10. We're just taking, start the regular meeting and then we're gonna come back and do the, talk about, priorities again for,
Yeah, I just got brought down with the diamond situation. Do you know anything about that?
other than, school is canceled, for the time being because the city office is laying on top of it. It,
Okay, that's the way to put it.
Slip down the hill or?
well, I mean, they're right next door and it fell off the foundation, just push over and yeah, well, the ramp like that goes up to the school is just like into the school building itself and.
Yeah, and then further downhill is the fuel lines and, I mean, they're
Oh.
horrible. And guess what, the fire department stuff is in the city building that they cannot get to.
Oh, no.
I mean, it's,
Yeah, they said, there was a picture of the fuel tanks, it looks like, leaning against another building, so.
Yeah, that's the school. Yeah, or the school's the green building if you.
It's a mess.
yeah. It's windy, no one can get there.
Right.
Yeah, it's so tough because everything's so close together.
Yeah. Kind of just like, some of the stuff in Ketchikan too, you know, I mean, everything's built on stilts and stuff and.
Must be permafrost there too, I would think.
Rock.
Or maybe not, maybe it's all rock.
I think it's all
Maybe
rock.
it's pretty solid.
But, you know.
The timbers when they rot.
The timbers, yeah.
Because everything's pretty much built on stilts.
I threw out about 250 old business cards that I had collected over time, but I did save one from Wells Fargo from Scott Henderson.
You got the big Rolex?
I had
one of those.
had one of those, and then I had clip after clip after clip of, you know, and I finally I got it down to 20, and there's like 2 of them that I was going to save and give to people, but.
Yeah. Yeah. What's classic are the old NBA stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I know you guys know.
Yeah.
I see you wearing an NBA sweatshirt every once in a
Right.
while, and
Oh. Okay. Okay.
The police would like to see if they can get early or something.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Nope. Don't wanted to change, we got your stuff back.
no garlic pizza anymore. I want Brian's favorite.
Right.
Get your call.
Oh, that's quite right.
Mark, are you still with us?
Mark?
Yeah, I'm still here, John.
Okay, great. You're the quorum, so.
Don't go anywhere.
We're looking forward to also some, by the way, I can't fix your keyboard.
Oh, is that?
Just, but we want, you know, I'm sorry. I wish I could move the piano up and move it, but it's a little too
No,
much.
yeah, I totally understand.
Really need to get all that stuff changed.
Oh, well, I have somebody that has changed for,
Change stuff.
I don't know about electronic, but
got the upright piano, I'd love to see that repair.
Where's that one?
That's up at Old Church, so.
Oh,
And he's actually looking at fixing another piano that I got from your grandmother. I gotta get the provenance on it again. But he was seeing if he could tune it and broke a string. And but you know they're all replaceable. But, you know, the soundboard was good. He's looking at putting that thing back together. So.
But I don't know if the soundboard.
I don't know if it would be terrible.
Okay.
I think the keys are all.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, I'll see about getting a look at it to see if it
Yeah, what we're doing there.
short term could be fixed. All right. Just need Maggie back.
All right, thank you, Maggie. Have a good evening.
This one, 12/11, is this just sometime in the future?
I'm hoping to have the chief is, getting copied on this, and all of a sudden there was a question.
Great.
And this being my first day back.
Yep, yep. Okay, time is 7:14 and call the regular meeting of the Nome Common Council for Monday, November 27, 2023 to order. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll to establish a quorum?
Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
I'm here.
Councilmember Martinson.
Here.
Councilmember Piscoya.
Excused, ill,
Councilmember Topcott.
excused conflict.
Councilmember Miller.
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. We were having a little work session here prior on hearing from the school district on their 2024 state of the schools. We had one other item, and that was to discuss our legislative priorities. We decided that we would take and suspend or put the work session on hold here to go on with the regular meeting, and then we'll come back to the work session when we're done with the meeting. At this time, I would like to administer oath of office to our representative from the school that the student body selected. We're happy to have Luke Hansen join as the student representative for this calendar year. Luke, would you please stand and raise your right hand? You can put that in front of you so you can read. I, in your name,
I, Luke Hansen,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the laws of the state of Alaska,
the laws of the state of Alaska,
and the ordinances of the municipality of Nome,
and the ordinances of the municipality of Nome,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
honestly and faithfully discharge the duties of my office
honestly and faithfully discharge the duties of my office
of City of Nome Youth Representative
of City of Nome Youth Representative
without fear, favor, or partiality,
without fear, favor, or partiality,
and therein do every justice
and therein do every justice
to all persons and to the city.
to all persons and to the city,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations and welcome. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure to administer the oath of office to Luke. and I was the ring bearer in his grandmother's wedding and grandfather's wedding, right across the street here, so. All right, that brings us on to the approval of agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Martinson. I would like to pull item 231103, the unfinished business item, and ordinance 231201, the new ordinance on curfew, and reschedule those to our 1211 meeting. Is there any objection? See no objection. A roll call, please, on the adoption of the agenda as amended.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes. Thank you. The agenda is approved. Moving on to approval of minutes. We have our November 13th, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion to adopt these minutes?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Martinson. Unless there are noted additions, deletions, or corrections, roll call please on their adoption.
Councilmember Martinson,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is approved. Moving on to communications, we have two items from the Alaska Municipal Control Office. And that being the renewal application for the retail marijuana store by Alaskan Growing Cannabis on 303 C West East Street. And a companion application the two in our packet are both numbered 11-119, but there also is 17-077 that is a combined renewal notice. Council wish to take any action on these items?
I would just ask, the police chief's not here, to ask city manager, is there any reason
No, I asked the chief, no complaints.
Thank you. That will bring us then to citizens' comments. Are there members of the audience that would like to address the council this evening? See no indication. That will then move us down the agenda to new business item B. Mr. Clerk, would you read resolution 231103 by title?
Mr. Mayor, that was also not supposed to be on.
Okay.
That one was not supposed to be on.
Okay, we will
I was
consider that
away.
a ministerial correction to the prior motion. So that will be on the 1211 agenda as well. So then that will bring us to item C then, resolution 23-11-04. Mr. Clerk, would you read that by title?
R 231104, a resolution in support of the continued use and maintenance of the Topgolf Shelter Cabin by the Mineral Kennel Club.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 23-11-04?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Martinson. Is there anything we really need to know about this? I think it's self-explanatory in the whereases of the resolution. This is support to formally request the continued operation of the Topgolf Shelter Cabin by the Mineral Kennel Club. Roll call please on its adoption.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Thank you. Four affirmative votes, resolution 23-11-04 is approved. Moving on then to resolution 23-11-05. Mr. Clerk, would you read that by title?
R 231105, a resolution supporting full funding $11,644,677 for the State of Alaska Municipal Harbor Facility Grant Program in the fiscal year 2025 state capital budget.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt, resolution 23-11-05?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Martinson. This is requesting that the Alaska Legislature fully fund Governor Alaska's Municipal Harbor Facility Grants Program in the 2025 state capital budget. A roll call, please, on its adoption.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
I think this might have been started before.
Please,
I,
Councilmember.
so is the whereas, mentioning Sitka and Juneau, are they also a part of this? Are they also other municipalities included, or,
They are on the list.
Yes.
okay?
Yep.
That was it, sorry.
Okay, great, no, thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to rush. So with that, then a roll call, please, on its adoption.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 23-11-05 is adopted. Moving on to the utility report, just briefly, the Christmas lights are on and everybody is now happy. Fire department and utility will be working together to get the other ornaments up on the poles here in the next little bit, and we hope it brightens folks' spirits. Otherwise, operations are normal. It's good to have a full staff, still in some training things, but checking down the list of getting things caught up, and it's a wonderful feeling. So, Mr. Manager, welcome home, and I hope you had a good vacation.
Yes, and I have almost 500 emails waiting. So, as some of you may know, there has been some dog food that may be infected by salmonella. I know I was contacted by Marguerite Thomas about this, and I know there was an article in the paper. And Cole is, anybody who has this dog food should contact Cole or the Department of Public Works so we can properly make sure it's disposed of. It's not just placed, it's not being placed in the landfill, it's gonna be burned and gotten rid of that way, so it can be harmful. And amazingly, some people who have either been near it or touched it or eaten it have also developed a case of salmonella. So we also are getting reports of foxes in town. Anybody who hears about that, please ask them to contact the Nome Police Department, who will contact Animal Control and the wildlife folks, so that we'll try to catch them. But apparently they're coming in closer this year. Other than that, Christmas, the Fireman's Carnival is this Saturday. Christmas extravaganza with our 25th with all new decorations. And I have to tell you, I want to give Cole and Cheryl and Angie and all the elves a lot of credit for getting Old St. Joe's ready for the 25th anniversary. The new tree looks fabulous, and the decorations that all got destroyed. And I want to appreciate the people who donated some ornaments to us, because it is a big tree. It's 16 foot. And it takes a lot of ornaments to fill that tree. So, but I want to thank everybody that's been working forward to that. And I want to thank the No Nugget for working on developing a new songbook that will have Inupiat songs in there, and we'll be celebrating Christmas with some of those songs. So other than that, sir, if anybody has any questions.
Questions for the city manager? Next time, we'll give you a breather.
I was waiting for Mark.
Again, welcome home. If he has something, he can ask it under council member comments, if that's all right. Moving on then to citizens' comments around number 2. Anybody think of something while they were sitting there?
I'm putting on my own kennel club hat.
Okay.
My name is Diana Hicker. I'm a board member of the Nome Kennel Club, and I thank you for supporting the Kennel Club's mission to provide shelter for the Topgolf cabin. And as for background, the DNR, they're renewing leases with cabins and whatnot on their land. So that's what that is all about, that we had to go through the process of renewing a lease that we didn't even know we had to do. But it's done, and with your support, I think that's great. Really appreciate it. We just renovated that cabin, dug an outhouse, but then came Murbach and took the outhouse away. But it came within feet of the steps of the new remodeled Topgolf shelter cabin. So it got spared, and it's ready to save some more lives. So, thank
Very
you.
important.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and thanks to your membership for taking that project on. It's not just dog mushers that use it, but folks traveling up and down the coast, and very much needed and used in the past, and I'm sure in the future. So thank you, Mr. Clerk. Would you call the roll for council member comments, please?
Councilmember Miller,
No.
Councilmember Henderson,
No comments.
Councilmember Johnson,
Nothing today, thank you.
Councilmember Martinson.
Nothing.
Thank you. And our youth representative, we'd not to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to say anything, you're welcome to the floor as well. Okay. You're learning fast already. Councilmember Martinson will appreciate that. All right, moving on then. I don't have anything more really to talk about tonight. To encourage you to attend the Christmas extravaganza, and I'm going to be out of town for a day to attend the city attorney Brooks Chandler's retirement. But I changed my flight today, so I'm coming home in the morning on Christmas extravaganza day because Angie didn't like the fact I was coming home at 5:30.
There were a few of us. They were already complaining to me when I got in this morning.
Okay, well, you can tell that has been changed. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting. The time is 7:30, and our next meeting is December 11th. So if we could then switch gears again here and move back to our legislative priorities discussion. Mr. Manager, would you like to start this out, please?
Yes. I have given you, staff has provided you about 3 or 4 years of what the priorities have been. These legislative priorities, there are 2 sets. One is the state, one is the federal. And we have to load up our state priorities in what's called the CAPSIS system, which then is pushed out into the legislature, and we work with Senator Olson and Representative Foster on this. We have been pretty consistent. These are usually for money. This is not policy. Actually, the AML has a policy commission that you will see what they are going to propose to the legislature. And they'll try to get sponsors for that. But we've been dealing with teacher and police housing. Continue funding for port improvements. Remember, we do not have all the money secured to complete the entire project. We've looked at the skate rink. And the idea is to put a cover over the state skate rink. We're now thinking it's gonna be in the neighborhood of about 1.4 million. There's always requesting for water and sewer projects. Um, we could consider funding for the heating and ventilation for the rec center. This all really gets down to is whether the legislature is gonna have money to spend this year based on gasoline revenues coming in. We were very fortunate, I think as you all know, we had a great year the year the legislature decided to prioritize significant capital improvements for the port expansion project. This is really up to you, what you think. I think if I'm right here, you had 4 projects last year. One was the, modifications, 175 million, but also for additional funding for the project, new teacher housing. Due to anticipated need for housing in conjunction with port development. This is a policy, provide state incentives to stimulate the construction of affordable housing. And the number of 950,000, that is wrong. It was, no, that was right. I'm looking at 22s. I don't see 23s here. I just read you 22s. 23s was pretty similar though.
Do we ever put school funding in our legislative priorities, or is that separate?
The school has their own process for legislative. There was a mistake in what the agenda was for tonight, which was supposed to be state of the city address, state of the school address, but they also have their process for CIP improvements.
So we don't include school funding priorities in our state legislative.
We actually do, council member. It's page, there's, the longer one is on page 4 and 6 is the one.
Not,
2020.
yeah, but those were passed. I don't think it would hurt, Mayor, to add increase in school funding.
Okay, I guess somehow I'm missing the page for. You see, these are our federal priorities. Federal priorities.
I just wonder if it made sense to piggyback on.
Like you said, I think they were pretty much similar. And the thing is that we tried a couple of times in the past to both on school and some water and sewer funding with DEC to advocate for those through the legislature. And we actually were at one point, and this was many years ago, able to get the legislature to add to the list. And the governor called back and said, thank you very much, but we have a CIP process for these things, and we're not going to, unfortunately, while I don't question that these are valid and needed projects, we kind of stick with the list. And I don't think that it hurts at all for us to just keep these things in the forefront of the legislature's mind. And these projects, maybe revised items are on the list, as Jamie said. One was 16 and one was 14 or something like that on the roof. So I think we should go ahead and get the roof listed on here too for the high school.
So we'll add okay, I just want to, I must have misunderstood.
They're not going to go anywhere, but it's the stuff that the school has actually put in, and it doesn't, just so they know that these these are still, needed projects in the community, and, it isn't likely that they're gonna go down to project number 20 and we'll get these two, but, it certainly doesn't hurt to draw their attention to it, I guess is my thought.
Because you will have we'll, as a staff, put it together, and then the council will vote on it.
Yep.
So do we have any, in terms of, I'm just looking at 2022 priority one, the port, do we have anything we should specifically mention? Just here's port funding non-federal project, in the same general.
Well, we don't have fully funded phase 2 or phase 3. And we also still don't know how the bids are gonna come in, because that process has really just started.
So keep it general,
I would say keep it general, the additional funding for the port expansion.
very similar to what priority one was.
But I would say phase 2, 3.
Modify a little bit.
Does the order matter? Like, are we giving them a list, or is this like a prioritized, does that make sense?
That's a good question. And, because sometimes they'll turn around, okay, what is your priority? And I think last year we tried to do the same thing, priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, priority, 4, priority 5. Not that, they're all needs. But yes, right now this, and I think we've been looking at teacher housing and then the state developing a state incentive program, for the state to come forward with a way to incentivize housing.
I guess I'm thinking for the state side of things, besides, specifically calling out this, teacher housing complex, that we're looking for legislative funding, hopefully a direct appropriation for that just housing in general is then, listed as underneath it here as priority number 3 generally, but we, the housing crunch, although, it seems like there are some, new rentals that have opened up recently. I think that, in listening to the Housing Authority and some others in the community, and some of the tribal organizations, that, just housing in general is a significant need. And rather than tie this specifically to port development, as we kind of have it here, perhaps we would consider just opening it up to, the severe housing crisis, community and region-wide type of thing.
So take port development out of it.
Potentially. I mean, certainly port development does play a role in it, but I don't think we, maybe, should limit it to that.
Yeah, but I mean, port development seems to be on a lot of people's minds.
Right.
In terms of, on the funding side.
Yeah.
So that's only,
So maybe it's
not
simply an order of,
One of-
simply a matter of reordering the sentence, then provide state incentives to,
among other things.
blah, 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 including the anticipated, shortage in conjunction with the port. Just flip the sentence around.
Because there's gonna be a severe housing shortage this summer just because of the number of projects going on. And it's not gonna be related to the port. And the hospital's got a project, I think, and some others have projects. So housing is gonna be very, very tight, if not very short.
Every summer.
And then, I guess just as far as, you know, we really shrunk the list in 22 from the list that we had in 20 and 21. But I think, you know, reincorporating some of that list from 2021 might be a good idea. You know, including, you know, specifically listing out these school capital needs, and you know, the public safety, and you know, full support for public safety in the community, and statewide.
So it's been on at least two, actually all 3 years, this covered multi-use recreational structure. That's basically an enclosed ice rink, right?
Not enclosed.
Whatever.
So I always want to clarify that. The idea is to put a roof over the ice structure and with netting around the sides. So it makes the facility more usable. So this has been a goal. Now, the one positive thing that has now happened is it's now more part of the recreation complex. They've got a building there to help support ongoing process. And, you know, this is one of these projects, and I guess if money comes up and someone says, do you have a small project, recreational project, this is the perfect project to do. It's not like trying to construct a dome facility, which has also been discussed recently in front of you. And it's also been, I think, a commitment that the city has been making to the Nome Winter Sportsman Association of, you know, supporting what the ice hockey program can be for the city. So that's why it's, at least in my 4 years, Mayor, maybe you would, you know, that's why it's been there. I think it was even there
It's been
before
there.
I was there.
Yeah, it's been there for 10 years probably. But still, you know, and I guess the only thing that has changed over the years is the number has increased. But it's one of those things with our lobbyists that you know, to have you know, you know, some smaller in projects, you know, in scope that potentially, you know, if there are other communities that happen to, you know, be pushing for recreational things that you know, sometimes you can you know, you can get a couple of them in at the same time, and so having them on the list. And I guess the other thing, you know, we've had some discussion just with regard to power infrastructure. You know, I'm not talking just nuclear, but other power, you know, potential wind expansion and the like. And while we have water and sewer listed on this as a desire, I'd like to see us put a sentence in there about power infrastructure as well.
When do we have to have this back or submitted to the state system?
That can be a movable date like it was last year to our benefit, but typically they would like to see it sometime in January.
We had a couple meetings to.
Well, you won't have a meeting, I don't think you want to have one Christmas Day. That's your.
No. Well, we had a couple meetings before we had to finalize the list and submit to the state.
Probably the first meeting in January, we
Right.
bring this back up again. But, you know, are there other things that come to mind by any members here that, you know, that we're overlooking or that we should discuss and consider adding to the list based on anything that, you know, has changed or occurred in the last year? You know, another thing, you know, besides the, you know, the housing issues, I don't know exactly what you call it, but community redevelopment redevelopment or community reinvigoration or
An incentive to repair, to improve housing.
well, I'm thinking about some blank spaces along here. And so, how we, whether, economic development opportunity or community revitalization or, some catch term that is used for those types of things.
Facility. Other youth facility.
Well, that probably should, development of a youth facility. I know that,
Ooh, yeah,
I forgot that, it actually was on my list.
that's really good.
Ours shouldn't have been shut down in the first place.
Seriously. Yeah, that, I think, I definitely agree that a youth facility of some fashion is definitely a priority. Probably should be pretty high up there.
Thoughts on it?
Good
Well,
idea though.
yeah, okay, well, we, like we were saying, we've got a couple of weeks here before we need to finalize, any of this, so if you, get an opportunity to look through this, and if something else comes to mind, by all means, let us know.
Now, you also, we work with, I know there's copies of the federal, we'll get that next from there. We work with Jay Stern, just for, and he is he has his own company called Windward Strategies, which is based in Maryland now. And he is our legislative lobbyist on the federal level. And been very effective for us. And I know that's seemingly more where we've been able to get money for improvements for water and sewer through the directed
Yep.
legislative grant program.
Yep. Taking some of these things from the 2021 list and, adding them back in. Our cost share is gone and, but we still need federal $4 in the deal. And,
I see that in 2020 and 21, they had a seasonal, the Coast Guard seasonal location.
Yep.
Does that rise to any higher level of desire or, likelihood now that the port funding is actually
Well,
happening?
that's one thing that we have been meeting, and the mayor can speak to it, and employees traveling tonight. One of the conversations with both the Coast Guard and the Navy has been, okay, we're planning this port. What do you need? What do you think you may need so that it all can be incorporated in the expansion project, with the idea of a permanent cutter being located up here, not in the next 2 or 3 years, but 5 to 10 years. So making sure we have the capability of hosting a cutter up here on a year-round basis. We mentioned it in here, which is not a bad, but I just want to make sure everything here is mentioned when we meet in Washington, D.C. with Congresswoman Peltola, Senators Murkowski and Sullivan. But this also allows Jay to go around and say, these are the priorities of this community that I represent and know. I mean, we can, and I think some of this is, we've been working well with the feds on domestic violence, and that's why we have the third highest person here in the AG's office. And, where we prioritized in the city, working with that, and they're talking to us right now about increased funding of some sort. Still have the environmental issues with preparedness and emergency response equipment facility, drug abuse, suicide prevention, education and treatment, unfortunately, is a statewide and nationwide issue. Just making sure that they know about it or remind them.
And I think in 2022, we really wanted to, or felt the need to focus the effort and zero in on just the port facility and the getting those federal dollars in the deal. So that was kind of some of the thought between shrinking the list last year. So I guess my thought is that we go back to expand it again a little bit to some of these other items that we had previously.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Put something together for your meeting in January.
All right. Well, hey, thanks everybody for the time today. It was good to appreciate your flexibility here to get this done and still yet to be out of here in a reasonable time and it snowed and shoveled. So.
Cole says it's raining tomorrow.
Anyway, Luke, let's figure out what your schedule is and when you might have a little bit of time to take a look around a little bit at some of the stuff in the city.
Yeah.